Hello there guys, Daniel Childs back here again. It's transfer talk time and we're nearly at the end of this wild, long, unpredictable, strange summer transfer window for Chelsea Football Club. Even by recent comparisons, Chelsea have a track record of being quite wild when it comes to transfer windows, but this one has been one for the ages, and I'm not saying that as kind of some hype man for transfers and saying how wonderful it's been. I think there's actually been a lot of negatives around Chelsea's transfer business this summer, but still it goes on, and I'm sure it's going to rumble on all the way until we finally hit that deadline. I'm actually going away for a couple of days, so I won't be able to make uploads, but knowing Chelsea, that ain't going to stop any of the chaos happening, so God knows what I will return to on Friday. What Chelsea they'll be, who we've signed, who we've sold, we will see. But obviously, I want to get through a lot of it and give you my thoughts before any of these potential deals may or may not happen. So I think the first place to start is obviously Raheem Sterling, Jadon Sancho. Just quickly, the Wolves review, obviously feeling good about that game. An amazing result and performance in that second half by Chelsea. So if you want to go and check that out, we did a full, almost 20-minute breakdown of that game. So go and check that out if you haven't already. But let's start off with the Raheem Sterling / Jadon Sancho news that has come out today. Firstly, from Mike McGrath, reporting for The Telegraph that Man United have opened talks over a Raheem Sterling deal. Apparently, the sporting director for Man United, Dan Ashworth, has discussed a swap with Chelsea that would take Jadon Sancho to Stamford Bridge. Chelsea have been expected to pay part of Sterling's wages, more than $300k a week, at his next club as they look for departure options. Sancho is wanted at Chelsea to add to Enzo Maresca's attacking options. One other as yet undisclosed European club have also been in contention for Raheem Sterling, who Telegraph Sport reported last week would train with the Chelsea under-21s squad if no deal was suitable before Friday's deadline. And then this was reported by David Ornstein and others in The Athletic. Jadon Sancho is likely to leave Man United, with Juve and Chelsea in talks. Was it last week? I lose track of how quickly things change at Chelsea, but I remember us speaking about Sancho, and at the time that initial report came out, I think there was kind of a dismissive tone, even from myself, but I did say when we spoke about it that you could not rule out Chelsea moving for Jadon Sancho based on everything we've seen this window. And lo and behold, here we are, Jadon Sancho in talk from Man United, of course, with Raheem Sterling potentially going in the opposite direction. Now, I think on the face of it, a lot of fans would be, I think, instinctively quite happy, I guess, with this move. Like, Sancho has not been the Sancho he was a few years ago, but especially when he did move back to Borussia Dortmund last season, we once again saw the talent that is objectively there. I mean, it's a little bit like Lukaku in Serie A, right? You just see these players, they find an environment, they find a league that just better suits them. And that's my big concern with Jadon Sancho, is that although there is talent there that we have seen in glimpses for Man United, is it just the case that he's a player that's just destined to thrive in the Bundesliga? But of course, those finances haven't worked out for him. They haven't worked out for Borussia Dortmund to make a deal permanent for him this summer. But in terms of some numbers here, Sancho was among Europe's most prolific dribblers last season in terms of take-on volume and success among forwards in Europe's top 5 leagues. If you look at that, his ability, especially once he made that move halfway through the season, he was really productive and he was used in the best way possible. And of course, Borussia Dortmund went all the way to the Champions League final, which he started in. So for him, it was a very productive second half of the season. And I guess with Joao Felix, and I don't think it's an unfair one, because back in 2018-19, Felix and Sancho were kind of the talk as kind of the big attackers in Europe, like for the future. They were going to be round, they were going to be the big names that were going to get big moves and be really successful. And of course, they find themselves in similar boats. Of course, Felix has now found his permanent destination in Chelsea. Will Sancho join him? So it could be almost seen as the, a previous era, or kind of the ghosts of kind of next gen past, where we thought these guys were going to be the big stars. Can they rehabilitate their careers at Chelsea together? So for Jadon Sancho, I think, obviously, I've said this before, I think he's a player I like. I do think it is quite funny. It's another case of Chelsea signing a player maybe years too late, when, if you remember back in 2019, he was deemed one of those big names that Chelsea wanted to go for in the summer transfer window. He eventually ends up at Man United in 21. It really hasn't worked out for him there. And with the Sterling thing, it could once again be a marriage of convenience. We see this so often. We've just seen this with Lukaku. And when Sterling will want out. Man United obviously want to sell Jadon Sancho, just the same as Atletico Madrid wanted to sell Joao Felix, and of course they wanted to sign Conor Gallagher. Although these would be separate deals, and I'm sure I think it's a little bit more complicated in terms of the finances, especially from the Sterling side. This might just be one where both teams and clubs feel like it's the best move for them, and the players feel it's the best move for them as well. Because I'll keep on saying this, you cannot have Sterling in the under-21s for the whole season. It would be a nightmare. And especially if Chelsea start losing again, it would not be a good situation for Enzo Maresca. So obviously, that's an unworkable situation for a player like Sterling. I think it will likely be resolved. But Sancho, do you even think Chelsea needs Sancho? It's another one of these cases where, do we need a player coming in the opposite direction? But then, once again, a bit like the Atletico Madrid situation, you kind of feel like it kind of has to happen for United to even want to buy Raheem Sterling, as has been stated. But would you be excited by Sancho joining, or are you concerned it's just another player being linked and join Chelsea? Where does he play? Does he get lost in the pack? What does that mean for others? But, as we saw at the weekend, when you have those depth of options, it can potentially help you. So we'll see how that rumbles on, because I think that one could very much happen. Now, I do think, though, that if Chelsea were to only sign Sancho, sell Sterling, and we end the summer without any centre-forward, that will be an easy stick to poke Chelsea with for the rest of the year if Chelsea's attack doesn't radically improve. And there's some times throughout the season when we lack a clinical edge. It is quite stunning to me, despite everything that's been talked about this summer, we might not sign a centre-forward, or at least, I know you can scream Mark Gear, right? But I'm talking about an established or a centre forward that was going to come in and seriously compete for a first choice spot. Guillaume may turn into that, but really, if we're talking about the sort of signings or the sort of targets that have been linked throughout the majority of the summer, it's kind of bizarre to me that Chelsea haven't made that a priority for them compared to other positions. And Ivan Toney is a name that's been long linked by Chelsea, and it's interesting to see how his future goes. Now, I don't want to go full in on this because Sky and Kave Solokul reported that Chelsea have made a move to sign him. But as has been reported in recent days, and I think Ben Jacobs reported this, others have too, Toney has at least what seems like a pretty close deal to go to Saudi Arabia with Al Ali, I think it is. He's got less than a year on his current contract. Apparently, the wages there would be significantly better. But of course, Chelsea do provide Premier League football. He stays in his home country. He stays in a league he's used to. And of course, staying in West London. However, I mean, what I would say is that, again, it does kind of seem, the reporting is that actually on the player side, he seems pretty willing to go to Saudi. It's just about the Saudi club, Al Ali, sort of making that deal happen now and materialise it with Brentford. So again, Chelsea are looking apparently for a proven goal scorer. The Victor Osimhen deal is kind of still up in the air. Lukaku is definitely going to Napoli, but it's whether Chelsea can strike some sort of a deal for Victor Osimhen, who I still would believe is their first choice. It's just, would Osimhen be willing to come on loan? We've heard consistently he's not willing to do that, but he doesn't want to move to Saudi. He wants apparently to stay in Europe, apparently, according to his agent. So again, it's another one of these cases where there's a lot of moving parts. And in the case of Toney, I think he would be a brilliant signing. He's Premier League proven. I think he would upgrade what we have. It's just, is it already too far down the line where he wants to move to Saudi and Chelsea have come in too late for him? And whether that Osimhen deal still is a possibility before transfer deadline day. So a little bit messy, and I still would kind of feel that unless that really breaks down, you'd still think him moving to Saudi is the most likely thing. Brentford clearly want to make a deal happen. So maybe that's just one Chelsea are too late into. I mean, even Dominic Calvert-Lewin is now being linked to Chelsea as an alternative because apparently they are looking at Armando Broja, who still hasn't made a move away from Chelsea. So the striker situation is one that, I mean, really, really could go down to the wire, just like the winger Sterling Sancho situation. I just want to ask you, if I told you right now Chelsea don't sign any centre forward, and try not to be influenced by what happened on Sunday, because it's very easy when you've had a really big win like that to kind of just go, it's great, let's be positive, and you want to be optimistic. But actually, are you looking back and going, can we really call this transfer window a success if you haven't signed a centre forward, when many people have been saying, and I think in some ways it's feasible to argue Chelsea should be signing some form of a centre forward who can challenge Nicholas Jackson. Maybe not to the level of Osimhen or Toney, which is, again, Chelsea have also wildly changed the type of striker they've looked at this summer. We've gone from John Duran to Amarodian. We have gone from that type of profile where you're kind of thinking you're going to sign basically Jackson 12 months earlier again, kind of a developing striker that you hope gets better, to now going for kind of the prime real estate big name strikers, or ones that would absolutely be coming in to start straight away. Of course, Osimhen is younger than Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney very much is in his prime, needs to be playing football right now, but is Premier League proven. And of course, you can't say that about Victor Osimhen, and there are some concerns about Osimhen's injury record and maybe the stylistic fit for Chelsea, but it's clear this is the other big thing that is going to rumble on to the end. And I still think that Osimhen would be deemed a huge signing for Chelsea. It could be argued one of the biggest signings. That's not a guarantee it's going to work out, just the same as with any transfer. I just still think that remains one that really does feel up in the air. But again, is it good or bad that Chelsea could end this window, all they've done this window, without actually signing a forward? I feel like that would be an easy stick to beat Chelsea with, even though I do think that Jackson is a very good young developing forward who I'd like to see given more time this season, and maybe could actually eventually become the player that Chelsea are trying to sign right now. So another one. Some other things to talk about here before we do wrap up. So Kepa, it looks like he's going to be going to Bournemouth on a season-long loan. Apparently he could sign a new contract, which is just, with Chelsea that is, to extend it to hopefully not lose him on a free next summer. I think the more interesting story that I've seen today is that Palace apparently want Trevor Chalobah, but there now is a possibility he might stay at Chelsea should Chelsea sell Axel Disasi, who is the subject of interest from Newcastle. The club will worry they'll be left with a lack of defensive cover if the latter leaves and they do not acquire a replacement. This is comical to me. I mean, it really is, because the idea that Newcastle would come in and seriously try and sign Axel Disasi and Chelsea would be concerned about that is hilarious to me. If Chelsea sell Axel Disasi, and the likelihood of us selling him for a profit, I think is really slim. And clearly, I think with Newcastle, it's linked to their pursuit of Mark Guehi, and whether that actually comes to fruition or not, that still seems very much up in the air, and one that will go down to the wire. If Chelsea get a serious offer, like a respectable offer for Disasi, I'd be selling him. And you keep Trevor Chalobah, who already, even before we signed Axel Disasi, is the better defender. And then maybe, just maybe, Chelsea could walk away in some capacity, at least in my eyes, with some credibility from this window, where actually Trevor Chalobah does what Trevor Chalobah has done in all of his Chelsea career, and he proves to be one of Chelsea's strongest centre-backs again. And of course, we'll still be trying to sell him, as we always do. But Trev, that'd be a remarkable turnaround, because, I mean, this really has felt like the summer he'd be making a move away. But I'd be so happy to see Trev remain as a Chelsea player, because I wouldn't be too stunned if, as he's done throughout his Chelsea career, he reintegrates, he becomes a first teamer, because he just is a good centre-back. And I think if he gets given a chance, he quickly proves to be one of our best and most reliable and versatile too. So, and the idea he can't play in Maresca's system is just absolute comedy. I mean, it's farcical. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense when, not only if you just watch Chalobah as a player, as a defender, but it completely flies in the face of the coach he broke through under, who played a short passing game. So I don't want to hear any of that. He is Premier League quality, Premier League proven, and maybe, just maybe, Trev has another season in him at Chelsea. We'll see if that develops. I hope if a good move comes for Trev and it's the right move for him, he moves on. If the Guehi move happens to Newcastle, there's no point of them signing Axel Disasi. But, if I'm Newcastle, I'd be advising them to go for Trevor Chalobah, not Axel Disasi. It's hilarious to me they're going for Disasi and not Chalobah, because you're just going for the worst defender. But if Chelsea can get money for Disasi, I'd be taking that money in a heartbeat, personally. The last thing is another player that's kind of been part of this bomb squad, and that's, of course, Carney Chukwuemeka. Apparently, Chelsea willing to listen to offers. He's only started 4 matches in 2 years, but has a release clause in place. Apparently, we're not quite sure what that release clause is. There's been talks about Chukwuemeka having interest from the likes of AC Milan, but that hasn't materialised yet. Georgia Petrovic, David Dacha Fofana, Angelo, and David Washington are apparently also all available for sale and or loan. Chelsea wanting to get a lot of names out the door before deadline day. Now, for all of these players to leave, I think is just unrealistic. I just can't see all of it happening in a short period of time. And again, I've seen some really clever spin that's tried to make out this is not abnormal for Chelsea, not something that is freakish, not something that doesn't look like a mess. As respectable and as much as I've read some of those pieces from mainstream outlets, some of them The Athletic, that have tried to paint this situation as normal, and actually, Chelsea shouldn't really be blamed for it. No, again, I mean, this is what they've created. They've created a situation where I look at a lot of those names. These are names that have been actually bought. All of those names I just mentioned: Carney Chukwuemeka, Axel Disasi, Georgia Petrovic, David Fofana, Angelo Gabriel, and David Washington. All of those names are players this ownership bought. So the idea that they're like with a Kepa Arrizabalaga or Lukaku, they're still struggling with the failures of the previous ownership. No, that's not the case. Some of these players we've bought in the past 12 months, mainly Georgia Petrovic, who for some reason is now not deemed even first team quality. When you get into this situation, this is the situation you create, and to have this clutter every single year, and for it to seemingly get worse every single year, is not smart business. It's not good squad building, and I don't want to hear anything else. That doesn't mean Chelsea don't have good players. We saw on Sunday on show we have some very good players who on their day can put out some really good performances. But that doesn't mean the rest of the situation this summer hasn't been a mess, because it absolutely has. And unfortunately, they've put themselves in a scenario where at least some of those players will likely remain. And what happens to them? Do they get reintegrated? Is there enough space, really for them to be reintegrated properly under Maresca? What's their morale going to be like? Because it's easy for people to just look at these players as names on a sheet, like you would on Football Manager, like you would with FIFA. I've seen people point this out, and it's very true. These are human beings. Some of these are very, very young footballers. Players who probably moved to Chelsea with the ambition of starting their career properly. And a lot of those names I've mentioned haven't really been given a proper chance. Fofana has never been given a clear look in the first team. It's easy to forget that was one of Winstanley's first signings. So you can't also pin that on, say, the Todd Bowley interim little bit right at the start of this ownership. These are players that this ownership group have, and this sporting director group have signed. So the fact that it's failed so quickly and already they're looking to ship them on, and they're ready to looking to ship them off is not, again, it doesn't reflect well on them as squad builders. I mean, it just doesn't. Like, no smart and shrewd club ends up with this many players looking to move on. So I hope for all of those players, they get a nice resolution. I just think the time is just not on their side, unfortunately. So some of them, I think, will remain. And I hope for those who do remain, there may be some path back into first team football, because for them to just kind of rot for a year is just a terrible situation. So that is it. I'm sure a lot is going to happen between now and transfer deadline day. I will be back for transfer deadline day. I will be back before the Crystal Palace game. I will be giving you my thoughts on the Servette game, which obviously is taking place on Thursday. Let's hope Chelsea can comfortably breeze through and make that not stressful at all, and Chelsea can make it to the Europa Conference League proper in the group stage. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.